Our next conversation is a returning guest, Democratic Senator Michael Bennet, who is also running for governor in 2026. Welcome back.
Well, thanks. Happy New Year, Kyle.
Happy New Year to you.
Thank you.
So, President Trump is pretty overtly punishing Colorado, right? He's removing federal jobs, he's withholding funding, he's killing projects because the state will not free his political ally Tina Peters, who's serving a prison sentence for tampering with voting systems. You've called it a revenge tour, and I get why you would call it that. But doesn't he have the right to do what is within his power to punish a state if he wants to?
I don't think he has the right to do it. I think it is unconstitutional for the President of the United States to take retribution on a state because that state didn't vote for him, or because that state in our federalist system has a voting system that he doesn't like. You remember when he came after Space Command, and he sat there during the signing ceremony at the White House and said the reason, after all was said and done, the reason he was taking Space Command away from Colorado was not a reason for national security. It's because he didn't like the voting system. That's not Michael Bennet making that up. That is literally what he said in the Oval Office. Just like the other night, he basically said, that this was a retribution for the incarceration of Tina Peters. So no, the president doesn't have the right to do that. No, the president doesn't have the constitutional right to take away funding that the Congress has appropriated. And frankly, the American people deserve to have a president who they know not only won't take retribution against states that didn't vote for him, but a president who will serve all Americans, whether they voted for him or not. That's what we really need.
I hear you saying that some of the things that he has done you believe to be outside of his constitutional authority. Certainly other things he's done are within his constitutional authority, like denying Colorado disaster rate for fires and floods, and vetoing the Arkansas Valley conduit, which you worked on for years, the water pipeline project. Those are certainly things that are within his power. And I guess my question is, for the things that are clearly within his power, does it matter whether he's doing it out of spite or out of principle or whatever, if he's the president?
I think it matters. I think it matters what motivates a president. I mean, the Arkansas Valley conduit, that was the first bill that I introduced as a member of the U.S. Senate to keep a promise that John F. Kennedy had made in 1960, standing in Pueblo, talking to the farmers and ranchers of southeastern Colorado. And we have carried it through, finding almost $500 million over the years to continue to build that so that the 50,000 farmers and ranchers in southeastern Colorado finally could have that promise answered. And he vetoed it, not because he disagreed with this, but because Tina Peters, his ally, is in a jail in Pueblo. By the way, put there by a jury of her peers.
Is that project dead? I mean, what's going to happen with that now, right? You got it through Congress unanimously. So the votes would be there for a veto override if Republicans are willing to, to risk the president's ire. I mean, do you think that you're going to do a veto override?
I'll never say that Arkansas Valley conduit is dead, because we've been fighting for it since the day I walked into the Senate, and we've been fighting to keep that promise, at least somebody has, since JFK made it in Pueblo. So we are going to keep fighting. We're going to try to work to see if an override is possible. The amazing thing about the conduit is that it's not like we're passing bipartisan public lands bills these days in the Senate, but we were able to put together a coalition of Republicans and Democrats in the Senate. I was able to say that Congresswoman Lauren Boebert had introduced the bill, which she had this year in the Congress, to be able to overcome an objection on the floor of the Senate to get that passed to begin with, only to have it vetoed by the president in the end. So we're not going to give up, I hope we can get it back on the president's desk, but it's going to take people in the Senate and the House standing up for the Congress, standing up for the rights that Congress had. You mentioned the president had the right to veto that bill. Absolutely, he did. And we have the right to override that veto. And I hope that we will use this opportunity to show the American people that we're going to stand up for our prerogatives as well.
Do you think that President Trump, with the permission of Republicans in Congress, is essentially making Congress irrelevant?
I think that he is working to try to make Congress irrelevant, and I think he's largely making Congress irrelevant. We have fought very hard for him not to be able to do that. In my office, we keep pushing back on stuff that he keeps taking for granted. Like, for example, I not only think a president shouldn't take retribution against states that disagree with him, I don't think a president should enrich themselves while they're in office. Like, I think that is a principle of our democracy, and yet he has made billions of dollars on crypto while he sat behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. And I was able to get the Bennet Amendment into a piece of legislation on the floor to try to stop that. We stopped 90 of his nominees from going through because the drug czar was not somebody that was supposed to pass with just 51 votes. And now, at the end of this last session, we held up the appropriations process because the president, in my view, had unconstitutionally threatened not to fund NCAR. So, you know, he is wildly out of control in terms of what he's doing, not just with respect to Colorado, but with respect to the enrichment of himself, with respect to the lies that he tells almost every day. I think it's very important for us to push back and also say we need a better standard for our president, frankly.
So you talked about the idea of holding up appropriations because of his promise to dismantle NCAR in Boulder and to move some of that climate science, weather science to other places to stop doing some of that work. Is this a change in approach for you that you're willing to kind of get more face-to-face with the administration? Because I remember a conversation with you months ago where you said, I don't want to needlessly fight with them, but I'll take them on when and where I think it's appropriate.
I think that's been my record with these guys. Look, those three examples that I gave you of my pushback they are unique in the U.S. Senate. There is nobody else who can sit across the table from somebody like you and say that they have done that. And I've done that because I think it's really important not just to stand up to Donald Trump, to stand up for the principles that I believe in and that I think that we should be transmitting to the next generation. So I don't think there's been a change, but I think the work is really, really important. And beyond that, you know, it's critically important that this does not become a new normal for America.
Do you look back with regret on voting to confirm so many of his cabinet nominees, including people who, in your view, are actively doing harm to Colorado?
Well, I wouldn't say that I voted for so many, but I feel differently about different of those votes. For example, I voted for Chris Wright, who is the Secretary of Energy, who is from Colorado. You know, and I talked to a lot of people from Colorado who were friends of his. I hope that his long association with Colorado would mitigate some of his worst tendencies with respect to energy policy and also with respect to NREL and NCAR and the rest. And I think I've been totally disappointed in that. I think he's been a terrible Republican cabinet member, and if I had to do all over again, I would have voted a different way. I supported.
Can I ask you about him real quick?
Sure.
Because he's a Coloradan, because he's somebody that you thought that you knew, do you have the ability to pick up the phone and talk to him about things like the gutting of NREL, and how do those conversations go?
I do. I regularly have communicated with him in one way or another. To his credit, he sends back answers to my texts and calls me back on the phone, so I have no complaint about that. But I think that he is a profound ideologue, and his ideology is at war with what Colorado is trying to do. He agrees very much with Donald Trump's drill, baby, drill strategy that I think is going to lead this country very much in the wrong direction with respect to climate and with respect to energy innovation. I believe this is one of the reasons why I'm running for governor. I think Colorado can actually lead all 50 states when it comes to that, but it's going to be if we're pursuing a set of policies that can actually focus us on the future. Chris Wright is focused deep into the past and has refused to change his mind. On the other hand, let me just say, I voted for the Secretary of Agriculture. And up till now, I stand by that vote. You know, I was, out of all the Western Democrats and Republicans, I was the only senator that said to the Secretary of Agriculture and Interior, we want a weekly meeting as we go through fire season with all the Republicans and Democrats in the Senate every single week so that we can stay on top of the danger that fire season poses. And they committed to do that. They did do that. They showed up on time and they did the work that we needed. And we were able to get the resources we needed in Colorado in the fourth worst fire season of our history. So that's what I would say about
those two secretaries. Secretary Rollins is the secretary who tried to pull SNAP benefits out of Colorado.
That's true.
but you stand by your vote to vote for her because of other things you feel she's delivered on.
You asked me whether I regretted my votes, and I regret my vote about Chris Wright. I don't think I should have voted for him. Yeah, I feel differently about the Secretary of Agriculture.
The New York Times is reporting that Interior Department employees have been ordered to make a list of all the Interior Department money that is coming to Colorado and to the state and to locals and to universities to potentially make that part of Trump's retribution campaign. Are you confident that the man that you voted for, Secretary Burgum, will stand up to that?
No, I'm not confident about that, and we'll have to continue to monitor that and assess that.
And so, back to this Arkansas Valley conduit thing. We touched on it, but I want to kind of
It's not just a thing; it's a real thing.
It's kind of amazing, right? Because you have a promise that was made to people, and generations later, we're the closest that we've ever been to delivering on the promise, and then Colorado gets rug pulled. Is there any point that you say, whether it's that or whether it's NREL or anything else, maybe we just give the man what he wants? Just let Tina Peters out of prison. If that'll get him to turn his focus onto another blue state, just give the man what he wants and maybe he'll go away.
I think that is a recipe for disaster, Kyle. I think that is a recipe for a race to the bottom that could destroy our democracy. You know, it really matters. The rule of law really matters. Our system of federalism really matters. You talked about what Donald Trump has the right to do as president and what he doesn't have the right to do as president. He has no right to pardon Tina Peters, who is convicted by a jury of her peers in a state court in Colorado. He has no right to take away money that's been appropriated by the U.S. Congress just because he doesn't like the state of Colorado. I think he has no right to take away Space Command either, and these are important principles to stand on. The work on the Arkansas Valley conduit has been the work of generations of Coloradans who have come generation after generation after generation, who have never lost the vision of those first farmers and ranchers, of those first water districts in Colorado, who had a vision for their community, a vision for what they were going to provide for the next generation and the generation after that. I have met people whose parents and grandparents died fighting for the Arkansas Valley conduit, you know, who believed that it was the next generation's duty to carry this forward. That's why it's so important. So I think it's critically important for us to stand up for this. I think it's critically important for us to point out where we disagree with President Trump, and it's important for us to stand up for Colorado and to fight for what's right. And that is what I've tried to do every day that I've been in the Senate.
So obviously, that's your current job. You're asking Coloradans for a new job, which is to elect you governor next year. As you assess what Governor Polis has done to try and work with the Trump administration on some things, try to firewall Colorado off on other things, are there things that you would commit to Coloradans? Here's how I will interface with the Trump administration differently than Governor Polis has done, or would you largely take his approach?
I think I'll take my approach, which I've tried to describe today, which is to fight very hard when I think what he's doing is wrong, to fight very hard when it's not right for Colorado, to fight very hard when I think it undermines our constitutional order, which I think a lot of what this president does, you know, whether or not it's technically illegal, I think falls well below a standard of what we should expect from our president. We should expect from our president that they're not going to lie every day to the American people. We should expect from our president that they're not going to violate the Constitution relentlessly. We should expect from our president that they're not going to take retribution on states that voted differently for him. That is all critical to the self-executing nature of our democracy. And I believe this will pass. I believe Donald Trump is a symptom of profound economic dislocations that exist in this country. I think it's important for us to recognize that he's not the cause of all our problems. There are underlying issues that we need to address. In Colorado, I am running for governor because we are having an affordability crisis that makes most people feel like their kids and grandkids are never going to be able to afford to live in our state. That is not necessarily something that Donald Trump has caused. He has made matters worse. But this is a moment where we have to be able to not just fight Donald Trump, but have a compelling vision of what the future is going to look like and have confidence that we're going to be able to get through this terrible period and come out on the other end handing our kids something that we're really proud of. And I am really optimistic that we're going to be able to do that, notwithstanding all the insanity that I've seen, you know, in this second Trump administration.
We've talked a lot about the federal government. I want to ask you about one more thing with our time remaining, because a couple of weeks ago, it was very, very top of mind for Coloradans that their lights were out and had been for days. If you were to become governor, then the Public Utilities Commission and energy regulation in the state would be more within your purview. How do you think Xcel is doing in terms of handling these proactive power shutoffs to avoid wildfires? How would you like to see anything change about the way that those are implemented?
I think what we're learning is that you can never communicate enough. You can never, there's no way to over communicate enough, if that's even a word, communicate enough. And I had a conversation with Xcel and with John Hickenlooper as well, wanting to sort of express the concern that I was hearing from communities and from businesses about the damage that these proactive shutoffs were doing to their businesses and to their holidays, frankly, at the end of the year. And they took that in. But I think we can never do a good enough job of communicating. We also, though, need to understand that we're in a new normal here. And these kind of shutdowns that we have never had to have in the past, we're now going to confront because of climate change. And California has been on the bleeding edge of this. Colorado is going to now be on the bleeding edge of this. And we're going to have to figure out how, as we think about the expenditure of funds that as taxpayers we provide to the utility to be able to do the work we needed to do, that it's done in a way that reflects the risks that we're facing and the new dangers that we're facing as a result of climate change. And I look forward to working on that as your governor.
Senator Michael Bennet, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Kyle. Happy New Year again.
Happy New Year to you.